getting more. I think this will be his last client, by the way. His last law client. You go on television and say. And Sean tried to help him. I thought didn't the president say he didn't know about that? Uh, you old geezer? And and he's like, oh yeah, well he knew about some of it, and then Giuliani realized, you could see the look on his face. He realizes that he said too much. Uh, uh, Roy. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna tell you something you didn't know. Yeah, lawyer. So much for confidentiality. We're very concerned, as always, about our immigrant population. The White House isn't, and they're less concerned today because, trust me, folks are burning at midnight oil looking at documents. Trust and believe. Joining us now, the president of the board of the National Farm Worker Women's Alliance, Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. How about that? I still got.
Good morning.
Good morning. I still got a little. I took Spanish. I think I still got a little bit left.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
That was pretty good, right?
That's great. Yeah.
Mónica Ramírez joins us now. Mónica, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Doing great. What about you?
Just fine. Just fine. Pleasure to have you. As I said, you're the president of the National Farm Workers Women's Alliance. You were on Capitol Hill last week. Tell us what for, please.
Yes, we were on Capitol Hill. The members of Alianza and the National Domestic Workers Alliance, there were about 200 of us that were on the Hill on Tuesday because we are asking our members of Congress to take into consideration the experiences of farm worker women and domestic workers when it comes to the issue of sexual harassment, which has been in the news a great deal, particularly since the fall. But what people probably don't know is that our current federal law doesn't actually protect domestic workers or farm worker women who work on small farms, because it only protects people from sexual harassment if they work in places that have 15 or more workers. So we were on the Hill educating members of Congress about this huge gap in the law and how every worker, no matter where they work, should be protected from sexual harassment.
How were you received on Capitol Hill?
I thought that the day was very powerful. I think that there were women who were with us who shared their own truths around sexual violence that they'd experienced in the workplace, which I think was certainly very emotional for everyone who participated in the meetings and moving. And I think that folks on the Hill needed to hear those real stories of what people are experiencing with no remedy. And so I thought it was a really powerful day. We had over 60 meetings, and I think most importantly, the women who were with us, who are from all over the country, sensed the solidarity not only amongst our, the members who are from two different national organizations and two different sectors, but also the allies who showed up to support.
So you were saying that the law really only protects women where there are 15 or more. Do I have that right?
That's right. So the current law, which is Title VII, the federal anti-discrimination law, it protects employees from discrimination, including race, national origin, color, sex discrimination, that work in places that have 15 or more workers. That means anybody who's working in a place that has 14 or fewer workers do not receive protection under our federal anti-discrimination law. And so if you work in a place that doesn't have protection by the law, your only option would be then to see if the state you're living in has an anti-discrimination law. And the reality is that not every state in our country does. So there are people who are experiencing sexual harassment, which is considered a form of sex discrimination, right now in our country, who have no remedy under federal or state law.
So, and obviously, in many of these settings, there are smaller numbers of employees.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the other thing about domestic workers and farm workers that is, I think, particularly unique is that both groups of workers are very vulnerable to sexual harassment because they work in isolated places. So, you don't see farm workers every day. You don't see domestic workers every day in the same way that you might see other workers. And it's that invisibility that actually makes them more vulnerable to exploitation. And when there's no law to protect them, if they were to try to come forward to, get justice for what's happened to them, then that makes it even more, they're even more risk factors for them because there's no accountability.
Who are the perpetrators of sexual harassment against women farm workers?
So in the agricultural fields, farm worker women are experiencing sexual harassment by supervisors, crew leaders, by coworkers, sometimes the owners of the farms. in some, excuse me, in some cases, it might be third-party vendors who come onto the farm. Truck drivers who are dropping things off, or other vendors who come onto the farm. Sometimes, if they're farm worker women are working picking crops from the fields, but they're also working in nurseries and packing sheds. So it's any individual that has access to those places of business that could be potential perpetrators. But what we've seen in our work is that it oftentimes is supervisors and crew leaders who are exerting their power over the women, and one of the ways that they're exerting their power is by sexually exploiting them.
This is really something. And when we talk about these farm workers, for many of them, what is their status in terms of citizenship or what have you?
So more than half of the farm workers in the United States are undocumented.
Yeah.
And there are women who are working here who are U.S. citizens. There are many women who are working who are undocumented. And then there's a much smaller population of the farm worker community that is their guest workers who come to the United States on temporary visas. And within the guest worker program, it's something about like 2% of the workers who come on those visas are women. So there are really three categories of workers that we're talking about, but it's the undocumented workers and the workers who are coming on visas that I think are extremely vulnerable because the perpetrators make threats against them that if they don't comply, they're going to call immigration on them, or they're going to call immigration on their family, or revoke their visa so they can never come back.
And as a matter of fact, even without the threat, I'm sure many of these women think it through. And if they raise a concern or blow a whistle, then they expose themselves to scrutiny, don't they?
That's right. People are really afraid to come forward to complain about anything because usually what we've seen is that, if someone is being sexually harassed, there are likely other workplace abuses that are happening too. So they're probably not getting paid, or they're not being paid their full wages. They're being exposed to pesticides and all these other dangerous conditions. And it's very likely that they'll never complain about any of it because they're afraid that the police will be called on them or immigration will be called. And that's a constant threat for them.
You're dealing with farm workers. I'm looking at an article in Vox, folks. And folks, join us online too because we're streaming Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Make it plain. This applies to immigrants who not just in farms, but who are housekeepers and nannies as well, right?
That's right, and it's across all industries. So it's hotels, it's restaurants, it's factories. I mean, I can't. I think what we know now, particularly since the fall of 2017, with all the Me Too disclosures, it's every industry. No industry is immune from this problem, but I think that there are certain industries where people are working, particularly low-paid workers who are working, who are immigrant women or women of color, are experiencing this problem at extremely high rates.
Yeah. So you all were on Capitol Hill. Did you get any indication that something would finally be done about this, or no?
Well, there are bills that are being contemplated in Congress. There are some bills that have already been filed to address the issue of sexual harassment. For us, we really hope that there will be more movement on amending Title VII specifically because, at the heart of it, folks who maybe are unfamiliar with the law, the problem here is that if there is an employee threshold, which there currently is, so if you don't work in a place that has 15 or more workers, you're not covered by our federal anti-discrimination law, that means there's no point of entry. So if you can't even access the law to try to fight for your rights, then any improvements that are made on the law really won't impact or benefit the people who are experiencing the problem because they can't even access the law in the first place. So we think the law needs to be better in a lot of ways, and there are bills that are addressing some of those issues. But first and foremost, we need to make sure that everybody has access to the law, and that means that they need to remove the employee threshold so that any employee working anywhere can, take action if they're being sexually harassed or experiencing any other kind of discrimination. And my sense from the Hill last week was that there definitely is a will to look at this issue closer. I think that there are members of Congress who are also thinking about the need to remove this threshold and do a few other things. We actually were asking for three things when we were on the Hill last week. It was to remove that threshold. Right now, people have a very short time limit under the law to file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and we feel like that time limit needs to be extended because, when people have been sexually harassed or experienced any other problem, sometimes it's hard to know your rights. It's hard to be able to file a complaint within a very short timeline. So we've been asking for that to be changed as well. And then the third thing is that right now, under our law, if someone has experienced sexual harassment, when they bring a complaint or when they file a case in court, the damages that they might be able to receive, if a jury awards some damages or a judge awards some damages, it's based on the number of people who work in their workplace instead of the harm that they've experienced. And so those are the three things that we've been asking Congress to really take a close look at. And I think that the meetings that we had revealed that people are thinking about these issues and trying to figure out how to go about making these changes. And, one of the problems is that we're in a difficult climate when it comes to making change on the Hill. And so it's going to be really important that we have support on both sides of the aisle because this isn't a partisan issue. Sexual harassment affects people on all sides of the political spectrum.
Now, Mónica Ramírez is with us, folks, and the National Farmworkers Alliance. So you all are calling this in your organization the Bandana Project, am I correct?
So the delegation that we led last week in this campaign is called the Unstoppable Women Campaign.
Okay.
The Bandana Project is actually a different campaign that we have, it's a public awareness campaign focused on raising awareness around sexual harassment against farm worker women.
Okay. All right. These are very important. It's a very important movement on a very important issue, folks. My fear is, you're right, we've got Me Too and Time's Up, but it's kind of been preoccupied with Hollywood and celebrity, but this happens to women every day that we never hear from, and it's happened. The perpetrators are not famous. So, I just would warn people that, you can fire Matt Lauer and Charlie Rose and lock up Bill Cosby. I don't want people to think that this problem of sexual harassment or sexual violence or sexual intimidation in the workplace in general is solved. And that's really what we want to say, right, Mónica?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other thing that we need to say is that firing someone doesn't solve the problem because that person is going to go and get another job somewhere else. And that person, if they've harassed somebody in one workplace, could very well harass somebody in another workplace. And so as a culture, we have to work on changing the cultural dynamics so that everyone understands that sexual harassment is unacceptable. And I think that employers need to be thinking about the kinds of programs they're going to be putting in place to train people, not just on what their rights are, how to file a complaint if they've had a problem, but how to change the work environment so that people know that this is unacceptable and there are upstanders who are speaking out for people. So it's going to take a lot of things. Fixing the law is one major thing to make sure that people can get justice if they've been wronged.
Right.
But as a society, we have to be talking about how we make it clear to people that this behavior is unacceptable any place, including the workplace.
And right, and you're absolutely right. It is it's critical that we do just that and see how it just crosses through all of this, folks. And as you alluded to, Mónica, we've got to change the culture. That's really what it's about. You can fire. It's not just these individuals. It is the culture itself that allows this, and that's what we have to confront. How can people get involved in what you're doing and your work and what have you?
Sure. Well, people can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at Campesinas Unite, which is CAMPESINAS Unite, Campesinas Unite. Or you can find us on our website at www.campesinasunite.org. You can also find the National Domestic Workers online. We are sharing a special webpage with them that's specifically on the Unstoppable day of action and our campaign to get Title VII amended. And if you go to that website on the National Domestic Workers Alliance site, you will be able to actually sign a letter to your members of Congress calling on them to take action related to amending the law so that it protects all workers. And, I just want to make one more comment in terms of the relationship with Hollywood, because we have been engaged with the women in the entertainment industry from very early on, because we wrote the letter that was published in Time magazine that helped spark the Time's Up movement. And I think that what is really important about the Time's Up movement is that it is an effort to look across all industries and sectors at this issue to figure out how we can work together to get gender equity for everybody, including ending sexual harassment. And so I think, to your point, we have to continue talking about the vulnerabilities of people in certain industries and the fact that this isn't just happening to high-profile people. But I think the other way people need to get involved is linking arms with us so that across industries, no matter where you're working, in what state, or what position you have, you're part of the chorus that is calling for change and also pushing for the climate in our country to change around this issue in every workplace.
Mónica Ramírez with us, Campesinas Unite.org. Let's get a quick call before we run. Louise in Pennsylvania. Louise, God bless you. Good morning. Get ready for impeachment, Louise. Go right ahead.
Well, just a couple quick comments. I was listening, and she said, you fire some of these people, and they're going to be going somewhere else. They're still, the past behavior, of course, predicts future. But it's just like the priests. There was sexual, violence, and they got, it's repeat. They got just transferred to other churches. So that was one comment. My second comment is I have a couple of clients that are Mexican. I think I only have about one, but anyway, they are very successful. He's a painter, and they bought income houses, and their daughters graduated from very good universities. But both of the women, the mom and the daughter, because they've been migrant workers, have tumors. They're not malignant, but they're tumors, and they cause a lot of headaches and stuff. So could that been caused by the pollution? Is that something you hear about?
So, pesticides that are being used in the fields cause a whole range of different health consequences. And, I can't speak to their particular situation, but I do know that, there are people who have been exposed to pesticides who either themselves were sprayed by applicators or were in fields that were sprayed while they were working, or sometimes it's even community members that have breathed in the chemicals because of drift. And we know that there are cases of individuals who've gotten cancer and other kinds of health issues because of the exposure to the pesticides. So I can't speak to their particular situation, but certainly pesticides have a whole range of very terrible impacts on people's health, and cancer is one of them.
Yeah, but bottom line is, just going to work every day is challenging, stressful, and maybe even hazardous to your health. We can at least theorize on that. You don't need to be sexually harassed too. How about that, y'all?
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
That's right.
Just fun getting up.
You don't need any of it.
Just driving in traffic in the morning is hard.
Yes.
Okay, so let's drive to work and get sexually harassed too. Why don't we? No, that's unacceptable. Louise, thank you for your call. But see, I'm just saying this because I want to just be fully transparent. And I agree, there need to be solidarity across industries. But one of the reasons I brought up Mónica, it's important that we don't allow the perils and trials of everyday workers to be overshadowed by these big Hollywood names. So in the Vox article, folks, and I'm looking at it online now. If you look at the stream, you can see it. Housekeepers, nannies, sexual harassment laws. And you look at the article online, and then it links to other articles, of course. So this article at the bottom teases another. Look at the screen right now. It says, Charlie Rose might get a new show where he interviews other accused harassers. So now they're going to, I'm going to make up a word now, celebritize the harassers themselves and put them on Netflix talking to a host harasser. So and see, so folks, when you do that, then it becomes normalized and anesthetized. By the way, the Washington Post is breaking this morning that Charlie Rose's misconduct was widespread at CBS, and 3 managers were warned. Thank you, Brittany. But let's give him a show. Let's give him a talk show, a harasser's talk show. Now,
And so the
final point, Monica, what I'm saying, if you're going to make a harasser talk show for the celebrity harassers, then that's just how much more the everyday unnamed, no-name harasser on a farm or in the house where the nanny is gets away with it. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really important point. The other point that I would raise is that, people have said things to us like, farm worker women can finally have a voice and farm worker women are finally speaking out. But we've been doing our work as a movement for over 30 years on this issue, and it wasn't that we never had a voice. It was that people weren't listening. Because farm worker women have been organizing around this issue for decades, and some of them have been successful in getting justice because they brought cases and they brought complaints, but there are many of them who've never gotten justice because people didn't believe them and no one wanted to hear from them. So, I appreciate you lifting up the experiences of farm worker women and domestic workers and nannies, those that people are not hearing from. We have to, I think, drive home the point that this isn't a new issue for these women. This is an issue that they've always been experiencing, but they just didn't have people who are willing to pay attention before.
But let me ask you this too, Monica, because my understanding also, the Hollywood actresses set up this fund for legal fees for women just like the women you're representing, not for themselves, but to help women who don't have the means to hire attorneys and defend themselves. Am I right about that?
That's right. It was for people across industries, not just women. It was for men and women across all industries.
You had something to do with that too, setting that up?
We didn't have anything to do specifically with setting it up. The letter that we wrote helped spark the Time's Up movement and the announcement around the fund. But there were women in the entertainment industry that were already organizing themselves, and they made the decision to do this after they read the letter and really wanted to think about how to address the problem on a much grander scale than they had. They'd been thinking originally, I guess, about focusing on the issue within their industry, but then after they received the letter, decided that they need to really try to elevate things and do work on behalf of people across industries.
Yeah. If you can't tell already, Tarana Burke is a longtime friend of mine. So
she's amazing.
Yeah, she's
incredible.
Yeah, and you are too. And the work you're doing is incredible. CampesinasUnite.org. Campesinas Unite, CAMPESINAS Unite.org. Get involved in this, folk. This movement is not over yet. It is ongoing. It is building. It is growing, and we're exposing it in every which way we can. Mónica Ramírez, pleasure to speak with you. Pleasure to meet you, and hopefully this won't be the last time we'll talk. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on the show.
All right, wonderful. We'll talk again soon. Take care now.
All right, take care.